Today, in Virginia, 7 black men were granted posthumous pardon. The 7 black men were executed in 1951 for the rape of a white woman in a case that attracted pleas for mercy from around the world. In recent years, it has been denounced as an example of racial disparity in the use of the death penalty. Cries and sobs could be heard from some of the descendants after Governor Ralph Northam granted the posthumous. This story is known as the Martinsville Seven. It's a story where all 7 black men were convicted of raping a 32-year-old white woman by the name of Ruby Stroud Floyd. It said that the white woman, who had gone to a predominantly black neighborhood in Martinsville, Virginia, on January the 8th, 1949, to collect money for clothes she had sold. 4 of the men were executed in Virginia's electric chair on February the 2nd, 1951. 3 days later, the other 3 men were also executed. All of them were tried by all-white jury, and it was the largest group of people executed for a single victim crime in Virginia's history. But the governor said on Tuesday that the death penalty for rape was applied almost exclusively to black people from 1908, when Virginia began using the electric chair, to 1951. 45 black people were also executed for rape. The governor went on to say, the pardons do not address the guilt or innocence of the men, but the pardons are an acknowledgement that they did not receive due process and received a racially biased death sentence. But he went on to acknowledge that they did not receive due process and received a racially biased death sentence that is not normally applied to white defendants. He said these men were executed because they were black, and that's not right. Too bad you wasn't around in 1951, Governor. He says all 7 men were convicted and sentenced to death within 8 days. Some of the defendants were impaired at the time of their arrest or unable to read confessions they signed. None of the men had attorneys present while they were being interrogated. Before their executions, protesters picketed at the White House, and the governor's office received letters from around the world asking for mercy for these 7 men. But they said, we ain't trying to hear that there. We ain't trying to hear that shit. One of the descendants said he was 4 years old when his father was executed. He said, I remember this very day. The police came to the door, he kissed us, and they took him away. This is what he told the Associated Press in an interview after the announcement that they were going to be pardoned. The governor also went on to say, the Martinsville Seven were not given adequate due process simply for being black. They were sentenced to death for a crime that a white person would not have been executed for simply for being black. And they were killed by the Commonwealth simply for being black. The advocates wrote in their letter to the governor, the 7 men, most in their late teens or early 20s, Grayson, Milner, Frank Houston Jr., Howard Lee Houston, James Luther Houston, Joe Henry Hampton, and John Claiborne Taylor. All 7 of the men signed statements admitting they were present at the attack. But at the time, they had no access to their parents or an attorney. 4 of the men testified in their own defense. 2 men said they had consensual sex with her. 1 man denied any involvement. Another man said he was intoxicated. he could not remember what happened. And it's a pretty sad story, if you ask me personally, because they were executed, killed, murdered, and now they get a pardon 70 years later. It's just sometimes it doesn't register with me, like, what does that do 70 years later? Yeah, their descendants are feeling a little good and everything, but to me it just doesn't register at all. It's like, what's the reasoning for? The pardon is too late. The 7 men are dead. And I want to actually read the definition of a posthumous pardon. It says, posthumous pardoning is a form of symbolic redemption, a way of redeeming a dishonor that is carried over from one generation to another. Posthumous pardoning has an important role in forgiving and reconciliation. It forgives historical actors as well as those emotionally affected by its decisions. They don't get no gratification from it. The descendants, some might get gratification if they were around during that time. What about the ones that don't even have a clue of what's going on? But even the ones that were around at that time, how does it gratify them? Because in the biblical scriptures, it says you got to pay a recompense for a recompense. So it has to be a repayment somewhere. Where's the repayment? All the involved parties likely dead and gone. Some of them were in their teens. Some of them were in their early 20s. It's 70 years later. And we know the 7, the Martinsville 7, they were all executed. But it's weird to me when you pardon somebody and they're dead and gone. So they don't get nothing from it. And that's why I understand posthumous pardoning is a form of symbolic redemption. It's just symbolic. It's not real. It's symbolism. Symbolic symbolism is symbolizing something. It's a way of repaying a dishonor that is carried over from one generation to another. So it's basically asking for forgiveness for something that was done wrong. But how do you right a wrong? Would that be considered righting a wrong? Let me know, because I feel some kind of way about it. I don't know if I could accept that as righting a wrong if I was the descendant of any of the 7. And with that, I'm going to say, this is the news in you. North, east, west, south. Unite from every alley in Cali. Intersection and back street. Subscribe to the channel and hit the thumbs up on your way out the door.